Welcome to the Organic Wine Podcast. I'm Adam Huss, coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Thank you so much for listening, and happy solstice season. I want to mention how grateful I am to those of you who have subscribed via Patreon. Your financial support is both incredibly encouraging and necessary in making this podcast possible. If you value this podcast and would like to support it, you can subscribe as well, and I'll include a link to our Patreon in the show notes. But also, a simple review with one positive word and 5 stars on the app that you use to listen is extremely helpful in getting the word out and helping the ideas that we discuss here filter out into the world of ideas through those algorithmic gatekeepers. It takes less than a minute to leave a review, but the impact is immense. So it may be one of the most efficient ways to do something ecologically beneficial this year. And I really thank you for doing that. The sponsor for this episode is Centralis Wines. Centralis is an ecological winery that I started to realize my vision of a wine world in which humans are the students and servants of the non-human world, regenerating and protecting the vitality of ecosystems and promoting the diversity of life through wines that uniquely and deliciously reflect local abundance. You can learn more, sign up for the wine club or email list, and buy wines at centraliswine.com. That's CENTRALAS wine.com. And if you enter the code OWP for Organic Wine Podcast at checkout, you'll get 10% off from now through the end of 2022. My guests for this episode are Tara Gomez and Mireia Taribó of Camins to Dreams Winery in Lompoc, California. In some partnerships, one person will have the greater passion for or experience with wine, while business or marketing savvy, for example, may be the forte of the other partner. In Tara and Mireia's case, there are two partners who caught the winemaking bug early in life and have spent their entire lives, both apart and together, learning about and gaining experience in winemaking. And both contribute their depth of knowledge to the wines of Camins to Dreams. What I'm trying to say here is it just isn't fair how delicious their wines are. Mireia is from Barcelona and grew up steeped in Spanish wine culture. She has multiple undergraduate and graduate degrees in chemistry, enology, viticulture, and all things wine. She met Tara while the two of them were working at J Lohr in Paso Robles. Mireia then hired Tara later on to help her when she got a job making wine in the Pyrennee Mountains. Tara and Mireia are two of my local heroes, based in Lompoc in Santa Barbara County, sourcing grapes from some of the same Santa Rita Hills vineyards that I've used for Centralis wines. But it's important for those of you who aren't locals to understand that these areas, now part of the Santa Barbara wine country, are the traditional lands of the Chumash tribe, which included much of Central and Southern California coast from Malibu to Paso Robles. Camins to Dreams is actually the label for the Kalawashag wine cellars named for the village where Tara's Chumash ancestors once lived. After J Lohr, Tara started and made wine for her Chumash tribe under Kita Wines. She is the first recognized Native American winemaker and made Kita the first winery to be run solely by its Native American tribe with fruit from their own lands. Tara was VinePair's Winemaker of the Year in 2021. Tara and Mireia started Camins to Dreams out of their shared love for wine, winemaking, and each other, and I'm honored to share their story with you. Enjoy! Tara, Mireia, welcome. Thank you for doing this. Great to talk to you guys.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. No. So I have the rare experience of actually having tried a lot of your wines, almost all of your wines, which isn't true with a lot of people that I talk to. So I can definitely say how delicious they are and how really your winemaking is really on point, really beautiful stuff. And it makes sense since there's 2 winemakers in your family, in your winery. It's sort of unfair advantage that the two of you have both a lot of skills and a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience to share. So props to you guys, though. It really does show in your wines. They're beautiful and delicious, and I will get into those, of course, in a little bit. But I would love for you guys to just sort of introduce yourself and your backgrounds, because you guys have not only rich winemaking backgrounds, but just rich cultural backgrounds that I think are help inform what you guys are doing too, that I'd love to just learn as much as I can about. Whoever wants to go first.
Oh, Mireia, go first.
I'll go first.
Okay.
So I'm originally from Catalonia in Spain, and I grew up there. I actually moved here in 2014. So when I was in Spain or in Catalonia, I didn't grow up in a family that was in the wine industry, but my dad is from a little village in the Pyrenees, and over there, like back in the time, everybody had a little vineyard in their house and a little cellar. So I was
Mm,
always like really interested in wine, and since a very young age, my parents allowed me to taste the wine and go wine tasting with them. And we would have this vineyard at home that we would always, harvest when it was time to harvest, and it was kind of like a family affair, party thing. All the family would go together to pick the grapes. Which at that moment I hated. Obviously, I had to get up early, and I was like, I wanna keep sleeping, but then the grapes would get home, and we would food stomp it, and that was like always super fun. And like I would say how wine would come out of those grapes. Um,
yeah.
I always say it was horrible wine, still not that good, but I always was, like interested in wine. And when I had to decide what to study, when I had to go to college, I also love science. I love chemistry. So I decided to study chemistry, and I got my degree in chemistry. And pretty fast, I think I realized that I didn't want to be all day in a lab. I'm horrible in the lab. Tara says that I break everything, anything that's glass
True.
around me. so
Butterfingers.
so I thought that that was like pretty boring, like, like to be like always trying to search for something that you don't even know if you're gonna find. so
Uh-huh.
so I was like, okay, I need to do something that's a lot more active and that's more like nature related too, because I love outdoors.
Mm,
So I decided to start studying enology, and graduated in an enology program. And the way I came here to United States, when I finished my degree in enology, I had to choose a winery where to do an internship, to finish my final project for the degree. And I just didn't know where to go. I decided I wanted to go to United States, and my university, my college didn't have idea how to send a student here. So I just went to the website of California Institute or one of these websites, put like all the emails that I could find in a list, and send like an email blast to all the wineries saying like, hey, I'm a student of enology. I'm from Spain. I want to come to a harvest. There was two wineries that replied to me. One of was J Lohr winery in Paso Robles,
mm,
and they already had a program to bring students every year. So I came here for a harvest. That was in 2006,
Six.
and that's how I met Tara. Tara was at that moment working there as an ologist, lab manager. We became friends. While I did my harvest there, went back to Spain, and after a few like internships and harvest here and there, I started working in a winery really close to the bottom of the Pyrenees called Castel d'Encus. Luckily, I was supposed to do just a harvest, but the winemaker left right before harvest, so I got the winemaker position right away. And it was like a crazy. I don't know, like it was like the hardest that I've ever worked in my life, probably, and the
Yeah.
mm,
longest hours ever. But yeah, I was there for like 6 or 7 harvests until I moved here in 2014. And in between, just like kept in contact with Tara. Tara started coming to visit. We were traveling all over the world, just visiting wine regions and tasting wine and learning more about the different varieties and different styles of winemaking. Um, Once I started there at Casteldencos in Spain, I needed some help, and my boss kind of like say like hire whoever you want. So I called Sarah, and she joined me in Spain for 2 vintages. Um, and in between all this, we fell in love, and that's how I landed here. Basically, in 2014, I decided to move here. We got married, and in 2017, we started our own winery,
Yeah.
and here we are.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right.
So
Tara, and
yeah.
yeah, I have follow-up questions, but Tara, you should talk about your how
Sure.
you got to this point.
Yeah. So for me, it was really just the love of science that kind of led me in this direction. I mean, at such a very young age, Actually, when I was like 4 years old, my parents got me my first microscope. And so I just love looking at nature through a microscope. And then from there, it just grew on the chemistry sets. I was kind of like an odd child, I guess, because I just like loved playing with chemistry sets and with science. And so that was kind of like what led me in that direction. And then also too going to a private school and seeing the priest with the wine and everything, and then my parents see. So I didn't have none of my family came from the wine industry or had a vineyard, but what they loved to do was go wine tasting on the weekends. And so back then my brother and we used to tag along and we used to go on the wine tours. And for me, I think it was at that moment, it was more like an instant connection because I remember passing by, walking on the tour and seeing one of the labs and seeing them in their white lab coats because even I had a white lab coat, and so seeing them doing titrations and all of that, it's just like something that really stuck in my mind. And I remember telling my parents, like, this is what I want to do. And so in grade school, is when, I remember even in our yearbooks, I remember looking back at it just recently. And I said I either wanted to be a marine biologist or a winemaker. So it was something I knew at such a young age. So by high school, I was already researching the schools of who offered enology and whatnot. And that back then there were only two schools. This was like in the early 90s. And so it was either UC Davis or Fresno State. And for me, I'm just like super hands on. And that's how I learn better, is just the hands on approach as well, besides, the reading portion of it. But there was already a winery on campus there at Fresno State. So it was kind of like a no brainer for me to get, the hands on experience because I've never worked in a winery before. I just knew that this is what I wanted to study. And so I went into the Enology program. Back then, there were like 100 students. And by the time I graduated, there was 12 of us that finished the program, with only two of us being female winemakers. And so yeah, it was a little rough, for
Mhm.
me, just going to school. I have a learning disability, so it took me a little bit longer to finish the coursework. As much as I love science and chemistry, it just took me twice as long to actually finish it because of that. But I stuck through it, and I'm thankful for the my Shumash tribe. It was with the support of my Shumash tribe that I was able to go off to college and actually get my degree. And so yeah, I graduated out of the program, got my first job at Fres Parker Winery, and I was there for a few years, and then moved on up north to J Lohr. And yeah, as Mireia said, I met her in 2006, and I was there for almost 10 years at J Lohr Winery when I was just like, okay, I'm ready for a change. I'm ready to do something else. But I had already started, um, you know, I created my own label, which was Kalabashak Wine Cellars,
Mm.
in 2001. So after I graduated, I moved up to Paso. I was already making wine up there. And so yeah, that was my first label, Kalabashak Wine Cellars. Um, and then in
8.
2007 or 8 and 9 is when I took off to Spain to go help Mireia with the two harvests. And then I came back, and when I came back in 2010 is when my Shumash tribe, they purchased the Camp 4 property,
Mhm.
which is a 1,400-acre parcel, and on there, 256 acres was vineyards. So after a lot of convincing that I did to the tribe of wanting to make wine, since we are in wine country, I mean, it made total sense to me. But them, like, they know nothing about wine, they don't know the industry. And so after a lot of convincing, they finally decided to, yes, okay, like, we'll let you try it out. And so I started off with 3 tons, and I created Kita wines for the tribe. And so that was really like my first, like, like job that was solely just me
Yeah.
and full control. So yeah, I started that in 2010, and that lasted up until this year, when they
Yeah.
decided that they wanted out of the wine industry altogether. And so I had so thank goodness we had already created Camins to Dreams, and I brought back Kalawashak, the name Kalawashak Wine Cellars, which is still our business name, because I held on to
Okay.
that licensing. And yeah, and so now here we are, and now we're doing Camins to
Oh.
Dreams.
So Comings to Dreams is not the license holder, it's the label. It's like the
It's,
DBA kind of thing.
yes.
Yes,
Got
Kalawashak
it.
Wine
Oh,
Cellars is the business name.
that's cool.
Yeah, we
Okay.
wanted, when we were ready to open or to start making wine together, we decided to create a DBA that represented both of us.
Yeah.
Um, so that's where we got the name of Camins to Dreams. Camins in Catalan, which is my language, means path. So it's the
Right.
path to our dreams.
And
As I was saying earlier, like like we used to travel a lot, Tara and I, and when she would come and visit to Europe and just visit all these wine regions and everything. So we say that it's through all the paths and routes that we took that led us, to where we are now, to
Yeah, the path to our
Tara's
dreams.
hometown making wine. So
yeah, that's great. I mean, I love that idea too of just, the way that life leads us and yeah,
Mhm.
and I'm into
And
that. And
we always, talk back about, when we started traveling together and everything, because yeah, we were traveling a lot. Like,
we were
it was
young.
awesome. It was like the best days of our lives, without any responsibilities back then,
right,
We were
right.
just starting out, and no worries in the world, just free
Yeah,
travelers. And,
yes.
those
Oh,
were definitely the good days. And I mean, we still do it like every now and then, but obviously we're a lot more restricted because we
When
have our own
yeah.
business now.
yeah. You have some wine babies to take care of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
no, it's true. I remember in I mean the nice thing about what you guys were doing, I think I did something similar, but it was a little more aimless. Whereas I feel like you guys at least could look back and be like, this also, these were all wine, not always wine. I don't know. I mean, I'm
They're
guessing that
always
there was
wine
yeah, they were
related
always wine
trips.
yeah.
related.
So in a sense, you were building your knowledge and
Yeah.
building in a
Mhm.
direction. Whereas, like, I don't
Mm.
know, I traveled and did things like become a horseback guide, or like just moved to the jungles of Hawaii and like lived in
Well,
a tree house and that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
not necessarily leading to the career or the passions that I do now, which would have
Yeah.
been nice. Maybe I would have been a little bit further ahead, and my wine would be as beautiful of yours as yours is now if I had done that.
Mhm.
But um, I so a couple things you said that I wanted to go back to, Tara. You mentioned the priest and with wine. Was that actually like a something that made an impression on you, like wine as a sacrament, or was that a
I
negative
think a little,
impression, a positive impression?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, because I was going to a private school, it was like literally 6 days a week. And so, you see, the priest drinking the wine. And back then I always like told my parents this, I don't know if I should be saying this on air, but, but I always wanted to make like better wine for the priests. But I didn't know anything of what I was talking about, but I always just said that I wanted to make some good wine for them so that they could enjoy. And many of them visited me, when I was there at J Lohr winery, and here at Fest Parker. Like, some of them would come and visit me, and I would give them a little bit of wine to take home and stuff. And I don't know, it's just something that, I always wanted to. I just love making something, and seeing their faces and how happy they get.
Mm.
I don't know.
No, I feel that. No, I mean, like, a lot of the joy that I get out of making wine is when people, when it's like something that people love. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, you grow, I mean, the what you make, as good as it is, like, I mean, it's great when you can continually impress yourself, but I think there is a time where you're just like, I've drunk this wine so many times. Like, yes, it's good, but like the initial love is faded in its fire and its fervor. But when you see somebody else light up from that,
Yeah.
it's really, yeah, no, that's it's a wonderful thing, like sharing that. I don't know, I'm yeah, I think I'm less ego driven and more that, whatever that is, the desire to make, to bring pleasure. I don't know, like a
Mhm.
hedonist evangelist or something. I don't know what it is, but like, um um but then, so here's a crazy question for you. Growing up, so first of all, you haven't said where you are, but that's Santa Barbara County,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
so the
And
sort
the
of
Baltic
countryside.
Sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
um
kind of important.
yeah, yeah. Which, and the Chumash tribes, that was, there and beyond that, was their territory
Mhm.
originally. And
Yeah.
so, and I'm wondering, growing up, this is a strange question, total, obviously ignorant because I don't have this experience, but I imagine, like all kids, however you're raised is normal because that's all you know.
Mhm.
Was there a time in your life where you realized, oh, like being Chumash is kind of unique, and I have this unique experience of life and a different culture than sort of the culture, the bigger culture that you grew up in? Did you ever have that moment, or
I I
you know
did. I
awareness?
did,
Yeah.
and that was in college when I left home, and which was my first time being away from my family and everything else. When I moved to Fresno, I remember my parents, they were really worried for me because I get homesick a lot of just being away
Mm,
from home, and so they took me and we met the American Indian Studies group there on campus, the
uh-huh.
indigenous group on campus. So they introduced me to some of the elders, and when I got the actual tour of Fresno State, I had asked if I could meet up with the indigenous community there, and so I got to meet them, and yes, it was really like a blessing in disguise because they not only took care of me when I got sick or something like that. But they also taught me a lot of, the culture and all the different tribes. And at one point, I was taking more of American Indian Studies classes because I kind of took while I was going to school. I got burnt out pretty fast with all the
Mm,
chemistry and everything. And so I took
mm,
a little break and I went into American Indian Studies because I was a part of that group on campus, and I just wanted to learn more. And so that was like very eye opening to me because being in the private school system, of course, you're taught different, and you try your best to fit in because I was always kind of like standing out from everyone, and so I was just always just trying to fit in. But it wasn't until college that I really got a closer, in-depth look at the indigenous culture and really took that in. And I was even traveling the powwow circuit and representing Fresno State as one of the royalty princesses that I used to dance in the powwows and stuff. I mean, and
mm,
it was through the elders that there on campus that I really learned a lot, and through my indigenous community there. So I'm really grateful that my parents, and I went and met up with them, and that was an instant connection for me because now I felt like I have family here who could help me and be my support group since my parents were so far away and my immediate family was so far away. And I just
mm,
remember I would always be going home the first like maybe 2 years that I was going to school there. I would always come home on weekends because I was always homesick. But then as I started to get more into the culture, indigenous culture, I started traveling more with them, and it was so fun that um, I got to learn so much more, and so yeah,
mm.
just
So
great for that opportunity.
yeah, it sounds like you realized you had this extended family of shared experience, shared culture, but also it sounds like it was a transition away from, you know, feeling like you needed to try to fit in to being
Mhm.
proud that you were different in a way. Is
Right.
that is
Yeah.
that
So
that's
that's
kind of
exactly it.
profound.
Yeah, that was.
Wow.
And I even still stayed in contact, with some of them, and went back and visited them, even after I had graduated, some of the elders and stuff.
Mm,
But yeah,
that's great.
it was a wonderful experience for me to learn so much more, outside of it.
And Kita was set. I mean, it was unique in the world, if I understand right, in terms of being.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah,
I was the first to be recognized, a Native American winemaker, and our tribe was the first also to be recognized as being run solely by our tribe.
yeah.
So yeah, that was a huge honor in itself, and yeah, I mean for me, like yeah, it was back in the '90s that when I graduated. So yeah, I've been in this industry now. This year marked my 26th harvest. So yeah,
That's
it's
that's fantastic.
and I'm still loving it. And that's what I always tell Mireia, like that moment when we feel like we've learned everything, which I know that will never happen, but not at least not anytime soon. But when you stop learning and everything, that means then that maybe you're getting burnt out, or you just, maybe it's time to get out of the industry. But
Yeah,
I still believe that we're constantly learning, and going back to like what we used to do when we first met, of traveling and visiting different regions. Like we still do that when we go and visit her family in Spain. We take her parents with us, and we go visit the different regions, or if it's a variety that we're interested in wanting to learn more about because we want to make the next year, then we'll go and visit that region and really immerse ourselves in that. So wine is always around us. We're always thinking about it, and it's always like the focus of our trips.
I love that. And that segues back to a question I had for Mireia, which was, it sounds like you got started real early drinking wine.
Tasting wine, yeah.
Tasting.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't know if it was drinking or tasting, yeah, but I actually remember when I was like super young. My aunt always says that I was like maybe like a couple of years old, 3 years old, and they had a family dinner or lunch at home, and there was like a little bit of a ball left on the fridge, and I don't know, they were like all like, like in Spain we do like these long table talks, whatever. So
Yeah.
everybody was like busy talking, chit chatting, and I went to the fridge, and I guess I decided that I wanted to try that wine, and I drank the bottle, and probably there was like barely anything, a glass of wine, not even that, obviously. But I went back to the living room, like, Auntie, I drink your wine. And they couldn't believe it. Like, they're like, oh, she's going to sleep all day. So, yeah, I think I was like pretty interested.
And you turned
So,
out pretty well. I mean, no major
yeah.
damage, no lasting
No,
damage, right?
I think they teach in Spain that, I mean, our culture there is like you drink wine, and now maybe nowadays a little bit less, but when I grew up, you would have wine at the table, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they
Yeah.
teach you to drink responsibly. I mean, like when you're a kid, they don't teach you
Yes.
to drink, but they let you
Right.
taste it, and you can smell it and taste it and say, okay, you cannot have a glass, but you can taste a sip if you want, taste how it tastes, and once you start like being a teenager, like I don't know, like 16, 17, 18. Like I was already drinking wine at home always for lunch or dinner. Like I would have like,
Yeah.
like half a glass. And my parents would say, okay, half a glass. What do you think about this wine? How you like it better than the other one that we tasted, I don't know, last weekend? Or obviously not during
Mm.
the week. I had to go to school. But on weekends or things like this, yeah, they would let me taste the wine and there's no problem. And I think it's just more like a cultural thing, educational, how they teach us
Yeah.
to think about wine. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a I'm sad that it's not more like that here. That's why I wanted to talk about it, just to
Mhm.
spread that message
And
of
just changes in the families, but also because my dad's side of the family, they are from a little village in the mountains in the Pyrenees. There's only 20 people living there, so it's. I grew up in Barcelona as big city, but I would always go there on weekends and summers and winters. So people there, it's a little bit more like like
Laxed.
lax. Yeah, they are not like all the regulations
Yeah.
and everything. So of course, like I don't know, you learn different there. So
Yeah. So, and similar to me, you guys don't own your own vineyards currently. So you're not, are you assisting with any farming of anything? Are you leasing any space? I don't think so, right? You're buying
not
all your
for the
grapes.
ones that we
No,
that
not
we are
yet. But
making, not
that's
yet.
our dream.
Yes.
Yes.
Our next
Yes.
dream is
That's
to one
you're on the,
day, one day have our own land that
Mhm.
we can not only live off of, but have a vineyard.
But prices
yeah.
in California are not easy. So so for now
Oof.
we buy
Yeah.
grapes and we just
Right.
Now we just
yeah.
keep dreaming.
And but now we
Right.
buy grapes from wonderful farmers that we have in Santa Barbara County. So
Yeah.
yeah, we just try to build these relationships with different growers in these areas that we think that they are doing a great jobs.
Yeah, no, I really like some of the farm. I mean, obviously, I wanted to talk to you because of your choice of the farmers that you work with, and pretty much, everybody that you're working with is growing organically or better. Can you talk? I mean, and we've worked with some of the same vineyards, and yeah, I mean, what informs, well, we'll get into your, I guess, like, obviously a lot of things inform that, because I know it's like you look for the kind of farming you want, and then you look for, also, you guys have a brand built on, you guys are in the Santa Rita Hills, but which is, Pinot and Chardonnay, but you guys are building your brand on the other grapes that aren't Pinot and Chardonnay, which is great. I think that's what's really nice about your wines as well. It's a nice change when you're there. But in terms of some of the logistics, I think for anybody who buys grapes, I know there's pros and cons. The pro is like you don't have to carry that crazy mortgage on a massive piece of real estate that's super overpriced in California. But the cons is like some of that lack of control, and some of the logistical challenges of when you want to pick, and those kind of things. Have you had any experiences that you can share that were just like indicative of some of those challenges?
Yes, no, I mean, definitely there's challenges when you don't have your own vineyard. You, as you say, you don't have all the control. You try to really build this relationship, right, with the vineyard management team or with the workers, so you can really be, like checking. We're really lucky that also like our fruit comes from like the farther vineyard that we have. It's like 30 miles away. So
Yeah, that's
like all
nice.
our vineyards are really close to us, so that makes it a lot easier to go through all the growing season to check on the grapes and check on the vineyard and voice what we think about it to the vineyard management teams. If there's something that we don't like or that we think it could be addressed, it's always good to have that direct conversation with them and build that relationship so you understand which way the vineyard wants to go and which way we want to go, and that's why it's also important to for us to make our research first before we start like to buy grapes from a vineyard. We really look into the growing that they do, how they manage the vineyard. We taste other wines, like that's like a work by itself, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
and then once we
yeah,
find a vineyard, yeah, you have to build that relationship. But in terms of logistics, yeah, it's obviously like this year, for example, it's been pretty tricky for everybody that was purchasing fruit. I think is when we had like in kind of like Labor Day week or weekend or 10 days of like a heat spike.
Yes.
yeah. What was
That we
that
were
heat spike?
used to here. I mean, it's hot around Labor Day weekend, but we normally get a couple of days of heat.
Hmm.
This year it was like 10 days,
10 days of like over 110,
over,
wasn't it?
yeah,
It was.
exactly. In
It
some
was.
areas inland was over 110. Here in Lompoc it was like a lot of days at 100 degrees when we're
Which is
normally
unheard
when
of.
we're normally like at 70, 80. So
Yeah,
No, more
uh
like 70.
yeah, so
yeah,
like everybody wants to
70s.
pick at the same time, and you call the grower and it's like, and you already advance that everybody's gonna want to pick. So it's like, okay, I'm getting
right,
close. You call the vineyard manager or the grower, hey, can I pick next Wednesday? And I'm thinking this is a Thursday today or a Friday, and he's like, yeah, in like I'm scheduling people for 10 days from today. And it's like,
right.
okay, well, like there's nothing I can do. It's what it is. Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
you have always these logistic problems in a normal vineyard, like in a normal vintage. If you call the vineyard team, I want to pick in 48 hours, or sometimes even 24. It's totally possible. This year was insane. Like it was impossible. And obviously if it was my fruit, I would have been able to do it, but not having a vineyard, that's what happens. And you have to deal with it then later at the winery in terms of like blendings and how you macerate, or like, like we had to change
Yeah.
a little bit the style of
It's
of making wine. Even though we don't add anything to the wine, you still can, do shorter macerations, or like,
Yeah, everything was short.
I don't know, like a more extreme sorting in the sorting table, if that's even possible, or like you kind of like disregard more fruit than you normally do, or
yeah.
so. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult once these things happens, but
Then you have to adjust.
yeah, that's
But
why.
and it's, I mean, I think it's just great for people to understand how logistics plays into winemaking, because it's so
Mhm.
like, if you're a somm and you don't know winemaking, which a lot of somms don't, because they're coming from a whole different perspective, you're evaluating these glasses of wine as if everything is equal, and everything is absolutely not equal, like in
Yeah.
terms of what led to that glass of wine. and
Yeah,
and like you said, it's like the times when you need the most control, where you have these extreme weather events, is when you have the least control, when in your position as somebody who's buying grapes, because that's when there's a mad rush for harvest. And so yeah, like when that, and it's because everybody is trying to get off, and you're yeah,
yeah,
you've got to deal with these problems at the worst time to deal with them. So it
right.
it exacerbates really what's happening. And then and of course, like you say, you guys, I don't think you guys could make a bad wine, but it's going to be different than if you had
Mhm.
the control that you wanted. It's going to be
Yep.
different than if the vintage had been different, and if
Mm.
like labor shortages were not a real thing, and you know what I mean. And it's like all of this goes
I
into a glass of wine,
Yeah,
you know.
I think that's also like the beauty of winemaking, and why, even though Tara says like, okay, it's her 26 vintage, it was my 19 vintage this year, like it's still like the excitement of how is it gonna come this year? What are we gonna do? Because every year is
Right.
different.
Yeah.
So it's not like every year you're doing the same, you're getting bored. It's just like you may be doing the same varieties and wanting to do the same, but it never comes the way you want
Right.
it.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
it's
But it's crazy too, because this was like the one year that we actually planned ahead, even going as far as like a whole week, 7 days of like, okay, like, it'd be like a Wednesday. Okay, I want to pick next Wednesday. We were already planning it. And which is something
it
that we
was.
don't really generally do, but we were just trying to think ahead. And
Yeah.
even with that, those heat spikes, yeah, we still got hammered.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the rain comes, and then it cools down,
Yeah.
and then nothing ripens. So it's like it's a never ending
Right. Right.
story.
Right.
Yeah. That's right. I just heard of somebody who was still hanging Morvedra, this, like, just in December, because it just
I'm pretty sure
wasn't.
I know who you're talking about
Yeah. Yeah.
and which vineyard it comes from.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and for people who don't know, I mean, when you say 100 degrees in Lompoc, I mean, that's insane. So you guys
Right.
Yeah.
are basically like 2 miles from the beach, or it's very close to the beach anyway. I don't know if it's 2 miles or 4 miles or whatever, but it's
Right.
it's at the front edge of what is considered the coolest region, the
Mhm.
Yeah.
southernmost cool region for growing grapes on the West Coast. And
Mhm.
that's because it funnels this ocean air right through the valley, right
Yeah.
through Lompoc. And the fact that it was 100, over 100 there is, I mean, it's
It's
Yeah, it's
crazy.
insane.
crazy. I mean, we get a little crazy when it even gets to the 80s, like here, because that's
Yeah,
even
yeah.
kind of unheard of as well. But now we're starting to see a little bit more of it because with all the changes and everything happening. So
Yeah, I know I mean, for a long time, a lot of the storage units there didn't even have AC, right? Like it's,
right,
I
Yeah,
mean, I think now, I think people are putting them in, but
yeah.
right.
yeah, a lot of time you could just store your wine there and not worry about it ever getting over 70, really. Like, and that was, for a couple hours in the middle of the day on a sunny day. Whereas now it's like,
Right.
yeah, like you've got to prepare for some bad stuff. Yeah. And well, that, leads us a little bit into the winemaking, which I'd love to talk about, because I'm really curious about how both of you had this J Lohr experience. And of course, J Lohr is as a big industrial wine production machine. um I'm nothing against it at all. I'm just saying that it's a very
Yeah.
different kind of thing than I think what you guys are
Mhm.
doing now, which is a small batch, relatively,
Mhm.
and very hands-on. And I would say, I hate to use the term low intervention, so I'm not going to use it, but you guys are, um I don't think, thinking about like how you're going to just uh do this and do that to the wine to manipulate it to create a consistent beverage. You really embrace the idea of showcasing vineyard and vintage variation, and letting that shine through by not doing a lot of manipulation and additives and things like that. So I
Right.
mean, I would say, I would use the word natural, but I'm beginning to hate that word too.
Mhm.
And especially because it just refuses to be defined, and I think it's kind of meaningless at this point. But
Right.
um, but it is a really interesting comparison from like where you cut your teeth to what you're doing now. And can you talk about how that informed what that was like, and sort of how you grew into your approach that you use now?
I think it was though more of a shock to Mireia because especially coming from Europe and then seeing all the additives that get added into the wines when we were at
Right,
Lohr,
right.
It was definitely a shock when my first day at J Lohr. I will remember totally, was just a shock, like in terms of like seeing the winery and the, I don't know, like the huge massive presses, and like the dumpsters where, I mean, where you dump the grapes, and
gondolas.
yeah, the gondolas and all that. It's just like, it was insane. But I totally remember the first day of harvest there, and for red grapes, or the first truck that I saw, basically dumping grapes into this turning thing that pushes the grapes
Oh yeah,
into like the crusher
Oh
and
conveyors.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a
whatever.
giant auger, like a
I
Auger,
remember
in
that's
that,
what
and
it
I
was.
remember there was a pile of bags next to it, and then they start opening the bags and throwing things inside, and it was like, it was nothing else than tannins and how you call it, chips, like wooden chips, which it's totally
oh yeah,
illegal
yeah.
here. In that moment in 2006, it was still illegal in Spain. So obviously I've never even seen that I knew it existed, but like to have it like so obvious, like just like opening bags and throwing it onto the grapes, I was like, oh my goodness, where where I have
Th-
landed.
They're adding like enzymes and wood
Yeah,
chips and
it was
probably
just
some
like,
sulfites
like
and
I had done, like, before I graduated, I had done already two other vintages, yeah, two other vintages, and two other wineries that were big wineries in Spain, but like nothing compared to to J Lohr. I mean, like, yeah, nothing compared. um so yeah, it was interesting, but then I also have to say that I learned a lot how to work fast in a cellar, and I think that's where I thrive now, like
mm,
working.
yeah.
I'm really good at in the cellar, like, like racking and I don't know, doing barrel work, or like all this stuff that you have to do, that I probably didn't learn to do it like the best way, but I learned later uh, at the other wineries in Spain how to be like a little bit more precise, or like better for the wine, more careful. But
Hmm.
definitely the speed level of work that I had to learn at J Lohr, it's actually something that is really valuable now, because I learned like so
Yeah.
much there of like moving hoses and connecting and disconnecting and this and that, and palms, and
Yeah.
so there's always a good side of everything.
And not only that, but we saw we saw that side of winemaking, and then we saw more of the lower intervention
Yeah.
style of winemaking, and so yeah, we chose to go that route, because we saw both sides of it, and of course we liked more of the
Yeah.
lower intervention, so that's the direction we went. But yeah, I mean, we got a taste of it, we got to see it, we worked in it,
Hmm.
with all the additives and everything.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, we chose to go the opposite direction.
Yeah. Well, why is that? Why do you think what is it about you? I mean, why? I mean, obviously you're not trying to be like a, half a million case winery, so that I'm sure adds to, as part of that, where
I
part
think
of just the scale. But is there anything in who you are and what you believe about wine and that
I think to
informs that?
me it's after tasting wines, like all over the world and traveling so much, and you get a point that you realize that you can make wine both ways, and you can make good wine both ways. But to me, wines that are made a little bit more like in big scale and with additives and more manipulation, at the end you can make the same wine here in Lompoc than in China if you want. Like you're adding the same yeast,
Right.
you're adding the same nutrients, you're adding, like yeah, there's gonna be a little bit difference, but you're filtering a lot. Like you're just like making the same in both sides of the world. While when you have like a more like minimal intervention approach, to me, you're really more true to the variety in a different site. So of course, Syrah is going to be different here than in France, and Syrah is even different. We make 3 Syrahs from 3 vineyards coming a mile apart each vineyard, and they're all really different because the vineyard site is different. And that's what it's interesting for us, like to see
Yeah.
how each variety represents itself in each site, in each soil, in its orientation. And if we do a minimal intervention, we're really letting the grapes and the vineyards speak by themselves. While if you have like more like like a bulk wine style approach, everything ends up tasting the same or similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the idea that you get to taste diversity when you don't
Hmm.
make wine from a recipe, essentially.
Right.
Is that a good way to
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
shorthand what you were saying in a way?
yeah.
Yeah, it's basically that. Yeah, it's just, and then obviously it comes like the part of like, like nowadays everybody wants to be more respectful to the land, to the soil, to what we drink and eat, and uh, we are more conscious on what we're putting in our bodies, and also on how we're farming the land. So that's also important. But um, in a wide spectrum, looking at it like that, I mean, to me, it's like diversity in the wine. It's important in the taste too.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Syrahs, which, yeah, I think are, some of the best Syrahs being made. Best in the sense of if you don't want a giant, overripe
Hmm.
sort of Syrah, like you guys have plenty of ripeness, but this is a balance. I mean, I know that you guys strive for balance, and I think you definitely achieve it in your wines, where this is, if you want refined, elegant, beautiful Syrah, you guys are making some of the best examples in
Hmm.
California, I think. Just, yeah, there's very few people who I think are able to evoke from Syrah in California the kind of things that you guys are doing.
Thank
It's
you
just,
for
yeah, it's
that. We
beautiful.
appreciate that.
No, absolutely. And what else are you making? I mean, there's that goes really for all your wines, which really do you guys really
Yeah.
do a great job with. So what else? Like I said, you're kind of steering away from Pinot and Chardonnay, but do you make a Pinot and Chardonnay?
No.
Anything?
No, we
Yeah, I
did
didn't think so, right?
at our previous wineries that we worked for. And don't get me wrong, we do love Pinots and Chardonnays. We
Right, right.
we just wanted to focus on some of the other varieties that are grown here in Santa Rita Hills, AVA, because this is where we live, and we just we love Gruner Veltliner, we love
Yeah,
climate Syrahs. We love Grenaches, and so those are the varieties that we kind of focus on here in Santa Rita Hills. And then just last year, we started to venture outside of Santa Rita Hills into the San Ynez Valley and Happy Canyon AVAs. And so now
mm,
we're doing some Albarino as well, for the whites, and then for the reds, we're doing Graciano, we're doing Carignan, we're doing Gamay. And so, is there anything else
Yeah,
that I
that's it.
missed?
Like
Yeah.
we're trying to add a little bit more of variety to the lineup and
Hmm.
a little bit more of fun to the harvest.
yeah. Didn't I try a carbonic Carignan? Was
Yes.
Oh,
that?
yes.
Yeah, we do
Ah,
a Carbonic Carignan for our wine club, and we do also a Petnat of Gruner, which is also like another fun one. So yeah.
yes, yeah, both of those were great. Yeah, I mean they were all great, but I think that was my favorite, the
The
carbonic
Carbonic
Carignan,
Carignan.
if I remember. But you made a non-carbonic one too, and now I'm confused because that one was really good
Yes.
too. I was like, this is my first Carignan that I actually liked a lot. So
Yeah.
I don't know which one of those I like better now. But anyway, teasing that for anybody who's
Yeah,
interested in
no, I
carrying on.
mean, for me, it was just like I always wanted to make a Carignan, like 100% Carignan. But when I was there at Kita, it was just part of a blend, and so it was Grenache, Syrah, Carignan. So I called it a GSC instead of a GSM.
I like that.
Picking out the
Yeah.
Mourvèdre and putting in the Carignan, but it was
Yeah.
always as a blend. So last year I was telling Mireia, I'm like, I want to do it. I want to make a Carignan and I want to make it carbonic. And then she was just like, oh wait, don't you want the Gamay to be carbonic? I'm all, no, I want to learn more about the Gamay. Let's do the Carignan both ways. So having a carbonic and then having it, just regular. Maybe I think it has like 15-20% whole cluster, doesn't
Mhm.
the 2021? So of the regular Carignan.
So
And
of these grapes that you're, I mean, I'll just have to say, like, anybody who thinks of these things as sort of like, I don't know, like not prime grapes or not something that they are, that they're excited about. Like, I just want to put it out there that you're making them exciting. So yeah, like I've never gotten excited about Carignan. Now I'm just salivating thinking about yours. So if that's any,
Aw.
if that's any testament to what you guys are doing. But I also think it's smart of you to work with these sort of less popular varieties to bring out some of that. But are you finding in that area, that you're really liking or really thinking something is doing well there? I mean, look, because I know you're looking at the vineyards, you're working with the vineyards and seeing how things are doing, and now you've got a couple of vintages of seeing how things are doing and in these different extremes that we're experiencing. Is there anything that's sticking out as something that you think has a good future, that you're excited about its potential,
I
especially
mean,
more than
from the wines that we already make, you mean, or varieties that we
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, or anything that you're excited to try too, that you're seeing as a potential.
no, I think the Grenache that we just started making last year, actually in 2020, or yeah, 2 vintages ago already, but it has a great potential. I mean, like we haven't really tasted that many Grenaches yet from Santa Rita Hills. Now they are starting to come out the last couple of years. I think Grenache is gonna be a great variety. I think like more Rhone varieties are gonna start coming from Santa Rita Hills. We are seeing
Yeah.
like, warming up also Santa Rita Hills. So Pinot Chardonnay is doing great. I love it. But I think Rons are gonna be really good here, like more like a cool climate Ron. Um, Obviously, I love the Syrahs that come from here.
Yes. Yeah.
I think those ones are some of the best Syrahs that you can find here in California. Not only ours, but other Syrahs that are coming from this area.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially as Ron varieties are gonna. I think it's gonna be interesting to see what else gets planted here.
Mhm.
Um,
Can Let's talk about Syrah a little bit. I mean, I know Syrah's had a bad rap for a while in the market. How's it doing for you guys in terms of sales?
I think it does better here in the West Coast than in the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
The East
Gotcha.
Coast is a little bit still like one match
What
Syrah.
is it? Yeah.
Like
What's it
Syrah,
supposed to taste?
seriously.
Yeah.
No, but I think in California it's doing good. I think we have like great Syrahs here. People is getting used to taste and drink Syrah again, and
Yeah, what's so cool about Syrahs too is that there's so many different ways of making a Syrah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what's so fun about it is just like, you get to taste like so many different styles of Syrah and of what
Yeah.
everyone's doing out
yeah,
there.
I
and
mean,
it's really
I
one
make
of the few varieties that you can have planted like for example, I mean you're in Santa Rita Hills, Western Age, you have like yeah Pinot Chardonnay, but you cannot have Pinot Chardonnay in Happy Canyon, or well you can plant it, but it's for sure it's not gonna work. Uh,
right.
Syrah, you can basically plant it anywhere, and it's gonna work. It's gonna taste different in one area
Right.
or another one, but it's a variety that I think it adapts really good to a lot of different climate conditions, and you're gonna have like totally different styles depending on the climate. But it's a variety that it really anywhere here in Santa Barbara County for sure, but in a lot of
What
different wine regions.
What do you find are some of the things that you have to do to make a good cool climate Syrah? I mean, can you talk about some of these specific, I don't know, things that you look for, the techniques that you use, way treatments of the grapes that you do to evoke what you think it really brings out the best of cool climate Syrah? And I don't know if that's different from warmer climate Syrah, but yeah, I'm curious about that.
Well, for us, we really don't have to do much, and that's
Yeah.
the beauty of this wine region. Uh,
Yeah.
like the good thing about Santa Rita Hills is that fruit ripens really slowly,
Yeah.
and it retains really good acidity.
Right.
So
Super
that's
important.
yeah, so that's really
Yeah.
important for our style of winemaking, obviously,
Yeah.
and for the style of wines that we want to make, because we want to make wines that are like more food friendly, a little bit medium body, not like big and bold. So but they still have like like that ripeness and that acidity both. So we don't really have to do a lot because the
Okay.
fruit comes really good, but we just like try to be like really gentle, like depending which vineyard you add, we add a little bit more of less of little bit of cluster inclusion,
Okay.
just to give a little bit more of a spiciness, or like to even like if we think that's like sometimes it's like you have a wine that you think it's gonna be a little bigger, so you can kind of like make it a little bit less lighter or like fresher in a style with that, or it's just like little touches in winemaking, but it's
And
really nothing.
and also too, we bleed a lot.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
what we get off of the sorting table, we figure out what the percentage of bleed that is, and how much we're going to add back. So depending on how the fruit comes in, if it comes in like a little bit higher in sugar, then we'll add more percentage of that juice back in. But if we're trying to extract more from it, then we'll keep that juice out and put it into the rosé program.
So
So
Right.
it's
so that's kind of like how we manipulate kind of that a little bit in that sense is the depth of the juice coming out. We determine how much to add back just off of the
we
bleed.
may lose a little bit of juice. Well, not lose it. We put it into the rosé, which at the end is a lower price, but you lose a little bit of juice to make like a little bit more of like quality, or like more
Mm.
structure, or more like depth, depending on the wine, depending on the vineyard. But other than
This is
that, we just like try to be like super gentle at the winery. We basically
Doing a lot of
do
foot
yeah
stomping.
food stomping.
do
Um,
you so you're talking about Saunier, right? So is that a practice that you do as a rule, or do you make that judgment based on
we
like yeah, like
we
what are you picking at? And yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, not it's not a rule. We do some percentage of Saguenay probably in all the wines. Maybe the
Okay.
only one that we don't do sometimes is the Grenache,
Okay.
because
Because
that one
that's
is
already
because
big.
that's like if you do a Saguenay, there's like it's but depending on the vintage and depending on the vineyard, we do more or less.
Yeah.
So it
Okay.
could go from like a 5% to a 20%. So sometimes it's like
Gotcha.
really small. Sometimes it's like, okay, this is a lot of like wine that you're pulling out, but we feel that wine that wouldn't have enough depth or wouldn't have enough structure. So that's how
Right.
we
Because it
balance.
concentrates. It essentially
Yeah,
concentrates what's
concentrate.
left,
Right.
right?
Yeah, you have more skins then, less juice.
Yeah.
You get more color. You get more tannin. You get, I don't know, a little
So
bit
we
different.
so we kind of create a program for everything, so nothing gets wasted. Basically, like
Hmm.
Right.
we
Right.
save we save everything and put it into the different programs that we're trying to create.
Yeah.
So
I love that. Um, oh, you made me think. What are you picking at in Syrah? Like, what are you looking for at harvest in terms of bricks and pH?
Uh, well,
I mean,
it's
what's possible there in Santa
what's
Rita? Is it
possible there.
like,
Yeah. It just depends. For example, for Shiraz,
yeah,
we do
for
different
Syrah? That's what I meant.
we
Yeah.
do different peaks. So normally like anything between 23, 23 and a half.
23 and a half. Yeah.
That's what we try to pick our Shiraz. Our pHs are around 3.4 when we pick 3. Yeah. So
Sometimes a little higher, depending if it's been warm or whatever.
if so, I mean, this year we're a little higher, obviously, because we had like all that heat
Yeah.
that burned the skins and everything. But pHs are like pretty low here in Santa Rita Hills, and
Yeah.
the acids are high. Like we pick at, I mean, not
Yeah.
necessarily on the Shiraz, maybe they are around 6, but still like pretty high
Yeah.
acid. So that's the thing.
Nice. Yeah.
So that's the thing. I mean, pH, you don't taste pH. It's more
More
like a matter of
acidity.
like like preserving the wine and stuff. But as acid in grams liter, like what we calculate in grams liter, you can taste the acidity of the wine, right?
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
so if a Syrah has an acid of 6, I cannot pick it at 22 bricks because it's going to be totally unbalanced. It's just
Right.
going to be an acid bomb when you make it. You're drinking white wine then, basically.
Right.
So people ask, like, what bricks do you pick? it really depends a lot on the whole chemistry, the whole picture
Yeah, we look at
of the
everything.
Yeah.
variety.
Right.
Yeah, we do
Gotcha.
a lot of
We can,
analysis
like, our grenaches,
for being
yeah,
low in
our
attention.
our grenaches, grenache comes from a vineyard here in that it's like literally like right outside Santa Rita Hills, but in the western side. So it's closer to the ocean, and there's no way we can pick at 23 or 24 bricks because it's gonna have a pH of 3
And a
and
Yeah.
TA
and,
of
and a
10.
TA of 10. So it's like you have to wait till it's 25 or 25 and a half, because if not, like
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
in lemon juice. So
That's where Grenache grown
so it
there
just
finds
depends
its
a lot. Yeah,
balance. Yeah.
we just look at the whole picture and combination of everything, and taste, obviously, and flavor too.
Mhm.
And then we decide.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, Terry, you made a good point there in the background about how much analysis you do. But I mean, I think when you are trying, I mean, that is the tool that we have to use when we're trying not to screw things up. So it's like,
Right.
information is really the main tool, and you're reacting to the information rather than, directing by manipulating. You're like,
Mhm.
just, you have to have good information so you can know how to react
Yeah.
and how to
To be
respond,
able
like
to
when
make
to
those
pick or what.
decisions. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And then,
absolutely.
of course, you have 110-degree 10 days spell, or 100 to
Mhm.
110-degree 10-day spell, and like all your plans go out the window, and you just have to do the best you can.
That's
I,
right.
I
And I
love
think
that.
our time at J Lohr too has really helped us on, I mean, in terms of like understanding the analysis side of it, and color, and pigments, and everything, just everything in general. So we kind of like use that too, just to be able to track each vintage, and stuff. Like we run a lot of analysis, and make sure, you just your general winemaking protocols, keep everything topped up, and all your barrels. And because we do add a little bit of SO2, but that's right at bottle,
Yeah.
when it the first and only time it sees it. So we try and do things here in the winery to make sure that, since it's all very risky, that we keep everything, in order and topped up, and always like evaluating.
And it sounds like, I mean, uh, the tools that we have to manage that risk are pH and CO2 management and oxygen exclusion. Are you guys, is
Mhm.
that, do you have other techniques that you guys are using
No,
to do that,
basically,
if since you're working
once the
without?
wine is in barrel or in a tank, yeah, basically it's you have what you have. So the only thing that you can really do, it's no oxygen and
Right.
temperature. You can, I mean, if you have, like, we don't have a cooling system, but besides the AC in the winery, but
Right. Right.
We have a cold
Right.
room.
well, we have a cold room for
Right.
grapes,
You
um,
don't have like a glycol
but
system
we
where
don't
you're
have
chilling
We don't have
tanks.
a
a
glycol
glycol system
system,
or
but
nothing. So that's another way of like minimizing oxidation. Obviously, if you have that, bring your temperature really low, and it always helps. But if not, yeah, just like no oxygen, basically.
Do you have, how quickly do you go through MLF
we're three-quarters of the way done now. Um,
now? Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it's really super cold though in the barrel storage
Yeah.
room. I mean, like we're down in the low 50s. Like I think it was 52 this morning in there, and so it's like we're trying
Yeah.
to warm it up, and some of the whites, like we're bottling here in February. Like it's like I brought them back to our winery here on F Street to. We turned on the heater to kind of warm it up to help it finish.
But not for malolactic. These ones
No,
are for
no.
sugars because they're
Yeah,
still
it's just
fermenting.
yeah, it's
Right.
Albano.
Right.
It always takes
It's like,
Oh,
forever.
wow.
The first white
Wow.
variety to come in and the last to finish fermentation.
It's
yeah,
crazy. Is
but
it
but
is it
go ahead.
is it searing acidity? Is that what it is? Like, really just, or is
Yeah, I
it
think
just
it's
that
super
the
super low
nature?
pH, really high acid,
Yeah.
and it's not that it's, I mean, it's not that it has a lot of alcohol for yeast to not be able to ferment. It's just like it's, but I think it's just the variety. I don't know why. I really want like someone else to tell me, like someone that doesn't add yeast to the wine, if they always had problems
Right.
with Albarino, because I used to have problems. I used to make Albarino in Spain too. At the winery I was working, we had Albarino, and
Uh-huh.
I always had problems with Albarino there too. And it was the only
Huh.
variety that would always have so slowly fermentation. So yeah, I don't know why. so,
Mm.
so when
That
we
is
decided
strange.
that we were gonna make Albarino here, I already knew this was gonna happen. It's like it takes forever to finish.
Yeah.
So there's always like this last 4 or 5 grams that take forever, and it's just like God.
So now we're giving it a lot of TLC, hugging it, doing whatever it
Yeah.
takes to
body
finish
body heat.
fermentation
Yeah.
so we can be ready to bottle by February.
Like put a blanket over it, give it little
Yeah.
pats on the head. Yeah. Um, well, I mean, that brings up a really interesting point, and just about vineyards as well. I mean, like you have these varieties that do different things, but I'm sure since you guys work with so many different vineyards, I mean, to me, it's one of my favorite things is to get to know a vineyard. You know, which seems to take years in terms of just learning how it responds to heat, to cold, to rain. You know, to all the different things that can come in a vintage, and then, I mean, it's like sort of the first time you make wine from a new place, it's almost like experimental. Do you guys find that where you're sort of like, well, let's just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks? Because you know, there, even if you've worked with the grape before, when you go to a new place, there's all these other factors that are intangibles that come into play that you know you learn by doing. Really, it's almost hard to
Mhm.
prepare for. Have you found that, or how's, you know, what's that experience like for you
I
guys?
think definitely. I mean, you never know exactly how the grape, thrives or not in a vineyard until you try to make wine out of it. and
Yeah.
and you may taste, we taste always like, like wine from other winemakers that are making wine from the same vineyard, but you don't know how they make the wine, or like not 100%. So
Right.
it's different than how am I gonna make it, and it may not work for me that grape for whatever reason in my style until, yeah, when we find a new vineyard, it's always like fun to see like how is
And
it just
also,
gonna come? What are we gonna do?
and also too, talking back to the wine growers now, because now this is like the second year in a row that we've had this happen to us with Albarino. So having discussions with them and seeing, kind of picking their brains a little bit too, and
Yeah.
what could be some of the causes of this, why it's so slow in finishing.
Yeah, that is strange. I mean,
Because yeah, we
like,
brought it in August, and yeah, weird that it's still
It just likes to take its time.
so.
yeah,
But this is the winery we come back to have lunch and stuff, because here at least it's a little bit warmer, and like we're not in the low 50s like we are in the other building.
right, right.
So
That's great. Oh,
yeah.
oh man. Well, there's so many things I could probably learn from you about winemaking, but rather than keep you too long, how can people taste all these different things? What's the best way to find out more about you?
I mean, the easiest way to taste with us, if you're like in like a close area to Lompoc, it's come to the tasting room. Or like if you're traveling through here, or like we're only 2 hours from LA, or 2.5 hours from LA,
Hmm.
so it's not that far. But yeah, we have the tasting room. Right now, it's only open by appointment, but we're hoping to open in January a new
Next
tasting
month
room next month. In the wine ghetto area. So
there's
I'll
more
be
foot
open
traffic.
for walk-ins.
and
Another option.
And then also too, there's the website, so caminstodreams.com. And then also the third option is we also sell the tasting kits. So for those that maybe can't come and visit us, or are from the East Coast or whatever, and never come out this way, that was one of the things that kind of saved us during COVID, is that we introduced these tasting kits where you get to taste with the winemaker and the owners, which kind of separates us out, from a lot of the other wineries that are doing it, because it's not that often you get to actually meet and taste with winemakers and the owners. So
So we ship you home like, a sample of 5 wines, and then send you a Zoom link, and you get to taste with us. So it's
That's, I
fun.
love
It's,
that
it's
idea.
something, yeah. As Tara said, we started during COVID, and it stick around because people keeps asking for it still. So we're still doing it. It's fun,
mhm.
and it's all, like private with whoever purchased the kits, or group of people that purchase,
Yeah.
friends, and
Yeah, we
yeah.
have. Yeah, we sell a lot of these during the holidays as well, because it's a way of families kind of like gathering who maybe can't come to each other's houses or whatnot. They get to see each other on Zoom. And so we had a lot of like family reunions of people that we were tasting with, that they got to see each other, here on the screen. And so that was really cool.
Well, thanks, guys. This is great. And that's Camins to Dreams. That's CAMINS, the number 2, and then
Yes.
dreams.com.
.com.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. This is great talking to you. We'll talk more, and just this is a tease for everybody else to try all your stuff, because it's worth trying. But thank you so much. Great talking to you guys. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And I just wanted to give a special shout out to Belen Arredondo, who is our mutual friend with Tara, Mireia, and myself, and helped make this podcast possible. So thank you, Belen.